Welcome to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM Sunday, broadcasting from Nassau, Bahamas, and streaming live on GuardianTalkRadio.com, the country's news talk radio station with fresh news and smart talk all day. Our Sunday lineup begins with The Political Review with Quincy Parker, live at 4 p.m. That's followed by Let's Talk Together in English with Lady T, live at 6 p.m. Next comes the Sunday edition of Voices of the Diaspora with Robert Dieudonné, live at 7 p.m. Followed by Caribbean and Urban American Gospel Hits with Landlord and Mike D at 8 p.m. That's all straight ahead, beginning with The Political Review, next, here on Guardian Radio 96.9 Sunday.
The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Bring them out. It's hard to yell when the barrel's in your mouth.
Come on.
Bring them out. Hey. Bring them out.
Yeah.
Bring them out. Hey. Bring them out.
VIP, coming live from the VIP. Heard the nightlife, lost life without me. Most dead in the state, wanna see by me. The whole city got pissed, heard he got 3. That other rapper got a hit, but shouted he not out. Who set the city on fire soon as he got free? The king back now. Brawls don't even know how to act now. Hit the club, strippers getting naked before I sat down. Still ballin', money stacked tall in the shack now. Still push a button to let the roof on the lack down. I'm on the road doing shows, put my Mac down. Mississippi to Philly, Albuquerque to Chat Town. I got the crowd yelling.
Bring them out.
Hey, all my hot girls yelling.
Bring them out.
Hey, all the dope boys yelling.
Bring them out.
Hey, front the back gate yelling. Hey, I'm the ready to get with other southern rapper hooded than this. I got rich and I'm
Yeah.
You be rapping by blow.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Political Review for March 5th, 2023. This is your boy Q, Quincy Parker, Kyle Quincy Parker, standing in your front yard yelling, bring them out, bring them out. Ready for a fight? Let's do it. You ready to go? Then we can swing them hands. And what? Oh. So, I hope you had a good week. Hope you had a wonderful Sunday. I hope your Sunday dinner is or was or will be fantastic. If you're out sitting by the pool, sipping on something nice in the wonderful Bahamian sun and you're listening to the Political Review, thank you for joining me. If you are chilling in your den and you got a nice little lemonade next to you and you're reclining in your chair, thank you for joining us today. If you're in the car, or if you're on your run, your afternoon run, what you're doing listening to me while you run, I don't know, but thank you for joining us anyhow. So yeah, it's a new Sunday. It's the first Sunday in the new month, and I'm excited, folks. I'm excited about life. I'm excited about my life and your life. I'm excited about my daughter's life, and I feel like we're all going to be surprised at the end of this year as to where things will have gone over the course of this year. Remember my continuing mantra about how you spend your time. Make sure that you are paying attention to the passing of the days and that you spend your time as wisely as you humanly can, because you only have so much of it. And God help us, it surely does seem like it's moving faster than it ever has before. So I just want you to really focus on making sure that you make the most of it. Tell your loved ones how you feel about them. Forgive those people who may not rate as your loved ones, because holding those grudges in your heart, those things only add pain to your life. They only add burden to your life. So live your life free. Let everything go. Do what you were put on this earth to do, and be content with that. And that's the end of my little sermon for today. Before we get into the week in local politics, I want to share with you a perspective on the ongoing FTX saga. Last week, on his first ever live stream for his new show, The Problem with Jon Stewart, one of my favorite talk show hosts, Jon Stewart, was joined by Dave Lauer of Irvin Finance and David Dayen, who's the executive editor of the American Prospect, both of whom are sort of commentators on on U.S. Politics, foreign policy, and that sort of thing. And they helped him to field calls from viewers about everything from Fox News' latest disgrace, and let me tell you, that's a story, to whether it's worth pursuing a long-distance relationship. And in the clip we are about to play, they address a caller's question about where the FTX matter is at present. Wally, if you could go ahead and let the clip rip.
The company FTX, which is holding sort of the bankruptcy, managing the bankruptcy, has asked for a lot of money that has been littered around, including into politicians' hands. They're asking for it back, and this is where the FTX story has really turned. It's really turned into a political corruption story. Today's indictment of Sam Bankman-Fried, I don't know if you read it, but it lays out a massive straw donor scheme. And what that means is that because there are certain limitations, whether because of reputation or because of actual FEC limits, on the amount of money that you can give, Sam Bankman-Fried was giving money to other people to then give to politicians to basically get around the minimal restrictions that there are in campaign finance. And they have him dead to rights. If you read this lawsuit, they have emails.
Which, by the way, it takes about as lazy an idiot to get caught in a campaign finance scandal. Like, why not just be a normal start a super PAC, and then you can just funnel like the rest of these guys tens of millions. It's like when you read about
this is the guy.
How much money has Ken Griffin donated to politicians? Tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, and it's unaccounted because it's all dark money, right?
Exactly.
It's dark money and it's unaccounted. But Bankman-Fried, in addition to doing dark money stuff, also did stuff that was on the books and did it completely illegally. And the FEC, which is, by the way, split between Democrats and Republicans, which is why they get almost
and
nothing
has done
done.
Nothing.
Ever. It's designed to fail. If they're suing you, right? I mean, if they're figuring out the scheme, you've done something incredibly wrong.
I don't even think they're figuring out. Quite frankly, I think he's an easy patsy. I really do. I think Sam Bankman-Fried, with this whole Chauncey Gardner Act and everything else, they're going to get him on every fraud known to man, and he's going to be the head they put on a pike and say, look at what we're doing about the corruption in campaign finance. It's all nonsense, and it's all a red herring, because the truth is that system is just a giant hose of dark money and unregulated campaign donations from every powerful player from here to
So
Timbuktu.
you're saying he's like the Martin Shkreli of campaign finance.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. That
Right.
he's a wonderful sort of something to put up on a notch on your bedpost when it comes to
Right.
that. But the truth is, how can you look us in the eye and say you're doing something about campaign finance when these hedge fund billionaires and all these other folks are putting tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars into our elections with no ramifications?
Yeah, it's
But
all legalized bribery, right? And so if you do it this way, you get caught. But if you do it this way, oh, fine, no problem.
You don't. Everything's fine. Yeah. But I mean, I do think that the FTX debacle did motivate Gensler to finally move from the warnings about unregistered securities, the warnings about fraud in the markets, and go to, okay, we're going to go to litigation now. And by the way, he's doing all this without any new regulations, any new legislation that has been put together. We know how to police fraud. It just takes the will. And what we've seen in the last month or two is that will coming from the SEC.
And don't forget the resources that it takes, right? Like I remember when all this started and the Southern District of New York came out and they're like, if we were to actually enforce every rule that's broken and deal with every facet of this case, it would consume our entire office, right? So these guys, these fraudsters have every resource that they could possibly want and all the best lawyers, and the regulators and the enforcement divisions are pretty underpowered.
So I've said from the beginning that the FTX issue is not a cryptocurrency issue. Now, I'm neither a proponent for nor am I an opponent of cryptocurrency. But FTX is a fraud issue. It's a malfeasance issue. What's critical in what those commentators said in the clip is that the malfeasance here is Sam Bankman-Fried using his companies to try to funnel money to politicians. That's a story as old as politics. This has nothing to do with the fundamentals of the Digital Assets and Registry and our DARE Act. This has nothing fundamentally to do with cryptocurrency. This is about political corruption. And I urge Bahamians not to get so caught up in the cryptocurrency aspect of the story that they miss the political finance implication. And that's as far as I'll go on that here today. Now, first up in the political review for the week ending March 4th, 2023, we go to the House of Assembly, where Prime Minister Philip Davis, the Minister of Finance, this week exemplified something we've said on the show before. Politicians, particularly cabinet ministers, should be careful when they speak because the record does not lie. So after falsely claiming in Parliament this week that the Nassau Guardian made up a report that government deficit was up in the first 6 months of the fiscal year, Prime Minister Davis was forced to shift gears when he was pressed by FNM MP Kwesi Thompson, and he said that his speechwriters were the ones who made the mistake, resulting in him providing inaccurate information in his mid-year budget communication in the House of Assembly a week ago. The last week, PM told the Parliament the government experienced an increased net deficit of $285.7 million, which represented an increase of $7.8 million compared to the previously comparable period. Both daily papers carried the story on the budget deficit being up. But as he led off debate on the mid-year budget this week, the Prime Minister accused the Guardian of reporting erroneous information without making it clear to the House at the time of the accusation that it was, in fact, him who had provided the inaccurate information in his communication. This week, He asserted that the government's fiscal deficit for the first half of the year actually decreased by $5.3 million when compared to the previous year. After the Prime Minister had wrapped up his contribution, FNM MP Quincy Thompson, who's a former Minister of State for Finance and the current Shadow Minister of Finance and East Grand Bahama MP, asked the Prime Minister to explain what accounted for his change in information on the deficit. Thompson read into the record of the House the Prime Minister's statement on the deficit made in his mid-year budget communication last week, and pointed out that the Prime Minister himself was the one who gave two different sets of information in the House of Assembly. Davis then suggested that it had been an obvious mistake by those who prepared his remarks, which is why he corrected the information. I pause here for effect. I want you to think about what I just said. Next up in the political review, Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernander this week urged shantytown landowners and leaseholders who want to clear buildings from their property to wait for the government before acting. The commissioner was asked about prominent activists going into the shantytowns and causing issues, and said that the police didn't want landowners and leaseholders in the situation to break the law. Last weekend, activist Lincoln Bain accompanied the purported leaseholder of a shantytown property off Bacardi Road, and she attempted to tear down the houses in the village. Police intervened and no homes were destroyed. The question of what to do about shantytowns has occupied increasingly prominent ground in the national debate, and actions like those taken by Bain, who has been arrested multiple times in the course of his so-called activism, have ratcheted up tensions around the issue. Supreme Court Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson ruled on February 10th that the government's shantytown eradication policy was legal, sparking an increase in expectation that the government would deal decisively with the shantytowns. An injunction she granted in 2018 prevented the government of the day from destroying shantytowns in the country until she had time to consider the evidence in a case brought by a group of 177 shantytown residents. With the removal of the injunction, expectations are high that movement will proceed with alacrity. Just 2 days before announcing that shantytown residents needed to find alternative housing, Davis said that evicting them without a plan would cause a human crisis. Of course, while in opposition, he also urged a humane approach to shantytown evictions. Also this week in the political review, a related story saw Minister of Immigration Keith Bell pushing for a three strikes immigration law, which would empower the Director of Immigration to fine violators for the first two breaches before that individual is taken to court and charged if there is a third violation. Bell suggested that taking every offender before the courts would be unrealistic because the already overburdened courts would not be able to handle the volume of cases related to immigration law violations. Bell reported that over the last 2 weeks or so in Abaco alone, immigration officials took 245 people into custody, and suggested that putting them all before the courts at the same time as dealing with employers, those who are accused of producing or procuring false documents, and others, would overwhelm the system that is already overburdened. Questioned by Guardian Talk Radio's Dwight Strawn on the disposition of employers who hire workers in illegal circumstances, Bell said that that's where these immigration laws need to be strengthened. He added that he has asked the Attorney General to review the legislation, that there's a draft, but that the whole draft has to be amended, specifically dealing with penalties and making those penalties very clear. In particular, Bell said he is pursuing the notion of creating fixed penalties for violation or breach of the immigration laws. He said that in operations the Immigration Department ran in Abaco, they've already had 30 convictions before the courts in the last 2 weeks. People paid the fines, and the government did not charge the employers. They charged the individuals themselves. He said it takes a bit longer now to trace and track and put files together and put them before the court, that would be the employers, if we're going to take that approach. Bell said he'd already warned employers as well as attorneys and notaries public against violating the Immigration Act. He said that if they continue to do it, they'd be put before the courts. And he said that it's the government's intention to start with the prosecution of these individuals and the professionals and employers to ensure that a very clear message is sent. Strawn asked if employers are taking the warning seriously, and Bell thinks that they are. Strawn also asked the immigration minister if he'd support the naming and shaming of employers who violate the law. Bell said, and I quote, "I'm in full support of it. England did it some years ago. I think they still do it. They asked and they signed an agreement with all of their newspaper outlets, the radio stations, and they have a name and shame policy for their criminals. I do believe that it would work for us, and it's more or less like a shock treatment." Bell said there are about 15,000 work permits right now issued in the country. He added that the Department of Immigration receives in excess of 30,000 work permits per year, mostly for laborers and low-end individuals. And he added that a significant percentage of those 15,000 work permits have been issued to Haitian laborers. In terms of the legal context under the current Immigration Act, any person who commits or attempts to commit an offense shall, except where any other penalty is provided, be liable on summary conviction to a fine of $3,000 or imprisonment for 2 years, or to both such fine and imprisonment, unquote. In a national address on February 19th, Prime Minister Philip Davis vowed strong action against individuals who violate the immigration law, including employers. Now, of course, there's a Bahamian statement, mouth could say anything. With the removal of the injunction by Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson, and with the new legal backing given by the court's removing of the injunction, we will look to see what action the government takes in terms of giving effect to the words that have been spoken. We've said on this show over the last few weeks that this issue has been such an open wound that every administration going back to the Pindling administration has had some version of a task force aimed at dealing with shantytowns. And the fact that they continue to proliferate is a question, it raises a question of how serious our governments and law enforcement agencies have been about dealing with the issue, which in itself, since our governments and law enforcement agencies come from among us as community, raises a deeper question. How much do we really want to see this issue dealt with? That's something that I think I'll raise with our guests when we get to them in a few minutes. But before we go to our guests, looking in brief at some other important stories in the political week that was, Minister of National Security Wayne Monroe said police are launching a consolidated sexual offenses and domestic violence unit. Monroe said the move is part of an effort to address sexual violence in the country. And if I'd had a few moments and some forethought, I would have asked Wally to prepare an applause track, because I think this is a very strong move, and I think it is way overdue. So I applaud the police and the Ministry of National Security for this move to launch a consolidated sexual offenses and domestic violence unit. Monroe said that very shortly you would have open a consolidated sexual offenses and domestic violence unit that would not only house members of the Central Detective Unit, but would also have offices for NGOs, that's non-government organizations, to take care of the needs of victims of sexual offenses and domestic abuse. In 2022, there were 55 rape incidents reported to police, which represented a 15% increase compared to 2021. Domestic violence is also a major issue. And the handling of domestic violence matters by police was put under a microscope last year when Heavenly Tervius, 21, was shot and killed allegedly by her boyfriend. The police said he shot himself and died late days later. In the aftermath of her killing, it was revealed that police had been called to her home just days before and had been searching for Tervius's boyfriend on the day of the incident. It was also revealed that there was a pattern of violence directed at Tervius and at her relatives. The incident made some members of the public question whether police were adequately trained to handle incidents of domestic violence. Next, Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Michael Darville, said this week that the Bahamas continues to face an increase in middle-aged and elderly Bahamians who need extensive hospital care, and that the post-COVID-19 health crisis facing the Bahamas is in the increased incidence of chronic non-communicable diseases. This increased demand for in-hospital care is putting excess strain on the ministry's resources, and the delivery of both secondary and tertiary healthcare services is proving to be challenging. Many of these unstable patients require recurrent hospitalization because of non-compliance with medication, diet, and sometimes the lack of primary healthcare follow-up. This results in many cases in remission, sometimes weeks after having been discharged. The minister said this is becoming a vicious cycle because these chronic patients continue to occupy the bulk of hospital beds, making it extremely difficult to admit surgical, medical, obstetric, and gynecological patients who, in most cases, have been on waiting lists for years to have life-saving, non-urgent surgical procedures completed. Darville has said that the Bahamas is experiencing a second pandemic of people seeking medical care. And of course, we remember that several PMH wards, including parts of the accident and emergency department, are undergoing renovations, which means they are unavailable for use. As to the question of national health insurance and NHI providing catastrophic health care for all Bahamians, Darville noted that additional funding would be necessary. The minister noted that he had laid a new bill, the NHI Bill 2022, before the House of Assembly a few months ago. And he said the new bill is still under consultation, particularly with the Bahamas Medical Association. He said, however, that he intends to debate and pass this bill before the next budget cycle. It's worth noting that the government budgeted $10 million for catastrophic health care insurance, but has since revised that sum to $9.6 million. It's unclear why $358,420 was removed from the allocation. The Christie administration introduced the enrollment and primary care phase of NHI on May 1st, 2017. And at last report, over 106,000 people were enrolled in that program. This week, we had a story go under the radar that I think is very important for us to pay attention to. And I want to go through that story with our special guest. And I also want to talk to our special guest about our top story, which may seem odd, but I assure you, you'll understand why. Our top story, of course, is the fact that the Prime Minister said his public disclosures would be filed late, and what we should think about that. He said it was just an oversight or something along those lines, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. So before we go any further, I would like to introduce our special guest for today. He is an old friend of mine. We used to be skinny young men together. He's still skinny and sexy, and I have the sexy part, but not the skinny part working. And he is a leader of a political party, an activist himself, a successful businessman. Ladies and gentlemen, I present once again Cassius Stewart. Cash, welcome back to the Political Review.
Quincy Parker, how are you? Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, my brother. I'm well. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm doing wonderful on this great Sunday. Just want to say good afternoon to the Bahamas and hope that everybody's relaxing on this Sunday, and hopefully we can give them a good dialogue as they relax on this good, blessed Sunday.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be the case. I have some questions though, Cassius. Let's start with the first issue that we talked about in the Political Review today. This issue of whether FTX is really about cryptocurrency or really it's about political fraud and political corruption. And my assertion is that it's about political corruption, and that we are, as a community, as we've been debating FTX and watching the story, we've been, I don't know if deliberately, but that we've certainly been distracted from the political corruption aspect of the story because, the numbers are so big and cryptocurrency is such a sexy thing to talk about.
Yes. Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
No, I think it's as this onion unfolds and this peels away, we're beginning to see so many different layers of this FTX saga. We've seen that some of the major donations going into the Democratic Party, major senators, so the speaker from the House Speaker down, and it seems to have been a money machinery to push a particular agenda. We're also hearing, of course, money is being invested in Ukraine from the FTX and so on. And so as they reveal pieces and pieces of the information, it seems that it was little more than just this cryptocurrency. It went deeper into funding governments and trying to influence governments and so on. I'm not sure whether the young man is being manipulated or used in that regard, but it seemed to have been a little more. And so, to really give a more credible answer, we have to wait until there's all of the numbers add up so that we can see the full picture. But it's quite striking how, monies have been filtered around through different governments from this very same crypto FTX saga. And I'm wait to see how this will further unfolds.
Yeah. The reason that I brought it up was because exactly as you say, it isn't the U.S. where FTX has been funneling money to politicians, or allegedly. Let me rephrase. And it was one of the first questions that was asked here in the Bahamas by the opposition as soon as the FTX issue blew up. Is can the government prove that they didn't get any money from FTX? And of course, they would, that question was dismissed with prejudice because the last thing people want is to be tainted with political corruption and political finance. But I think that there's a very strong argument to be made for holding your breath and waiting to see, because the investigations are very thorough, and
Yes.
and I think that I think that we are, as a jurisdiction, our DARE Act and our Digital Assets Registry and our regulations around cryptocurrency have been vindicated, certainly, with the FTX liquidator saying that FTX customers are lucky that the Bahamas acted as it did. But I worry about what political fallout there may be from any campaign finance or finance malfeasance.
Well, I mean, let me just clarify something. Before, if FTX had given money to the Bahamas government for capital development, for education, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The issue comes in where you're receiving personal money is into your own pocket. So that's where the problem comes in. So if FTX had donated $20 million to the Ministry of Education for development of the schools, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. For FTX to donate money is to the feeding program and to help the poor, there was absolutely nothing wrong with that. Those programs are nothing, and people made it look as if there was something wrong with it. This was a legitimate company at the time, and their back-end finance caused their company to collapse. But because they were legitimate and they were operating and they were donating monies to, whether it be the government per se, and also non-governmental organizations like churches to feed the poor, that's absolutely legal. The issue comes in when politicians begin to receive money personally into their pocket without disclosing it. And so if they receive personal money, then that becomes the issue there at hand. And so that is yet to be seen, and we are waiting to see whether that falls. But there's absolutely nothing, and I mean, people made it feel like as if Bishop Lawrence Rule did something wrong. They did nothing wrong. It's just it was a perfectly legal transaction. And so I'm not sure the liquidators could have demanded what they were demanding. That was really that didn't make any sense, because if you donate money to a non-governmental organization to feed the poor, you can't say you want that money back because the money was already spent. So that didn't make any sense. But I guess that was all in the heat of things, and then also basically were driven by emotions. And so, like they did say that the Bahamas did act responsibility in seizing all of the assets so that they could secure all of the account holders. And I thought that was a very good move on our part.
Yeah, we as I say, I think as a jurisdiction, our regulatory regime certainly was vindicated. And I don't want to.
Quincy, it was interesting enough. Initially, they were trying to maim us. They were trying to talk bad, but us calling us bottom feelers, calling us corrupt, and and all we were trying to do was protect their account holders. And so I'm defending the government on this one, because what the Americans were doing was trying to make us look bad, and the reporters were trying to make us look bad. And all we did was we did the right thing. And so, quite frankly, they owe us an apology, because they're making our jurisdiction look like we're just a bunch of crooks. And we brought this FTX to the Bahamas to operate crookedly, which was not true. And, and so we got to now restore the dignity and the integrity of our crypto markets and our new industry that we're seeking to establish. But, we have to demand an apology from all of them or sue them, because they really did a bad job on us.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. There's certainly a defamation. I think there's definite grounds for a defamation lawsuit issued by the Bahamas. Because they called us some names and they said some things about our government that I think were egregious, and we shouldn't just smile and say everything is okay.
No, listen. we have to defend the integrity of our jurisdiction. And what really happens is that, the American media seem to love it when you fall, and they seem to like to drag you through the mud. I think Meghan and Harry feel in the very same pinch right now, off the topic, right? They love to drag you through the mud. They love to bring you to the ground and smash you on the ground and make mud of you. But, that's why we have defamation laws and they have defamation laws. And so we have to go after them so that they'll know better next time when you try to I guess, impugn the reputation of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We all got to stand up against that together.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, I've been talking about this immigration thing, and I know you've been talking about it too. What I want to get is your thoughts on how we should deal with the landowners, the leaseholders, the employers who are benefiting from the illegal labor, right? Because our sights have perennially been set on the laborer, because it's easy to pick them up and ship them off to wherever, whether it's Haiti, whether it's Cuba, whether it's Jamaica, wherever. But I remember having a conversation with an immigration officer who told me about, the fact that people would know that a raid is coming, so they would talk to another member of the community and say, okay, while I'm gone, I need you to look after my store, or I need you to look after my business. And then 5 months later, they're back in the country and they just pick up where they left off.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing can't happen.
Yeah.
Just on the ingenuity of a laborer. That takes facilitation. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's across the board. I mean, there are different players when it comes to the workforce. You also have the laborer, you have the employer as well too. But also too, you have the politicians. And so the very same people who try to prosecute, you use these people to get votes. And then after they didn't get their votes, they're insecure, then they come after you and say, oh, you're not supposed to be here. I mean, at which point how you want this play out? Because you can't say on one hand that these people are illegal, they should go home, right? But when election come, you go pandering to them and saying, oh, you have rallies in their community and so on, and make statements like we all won. You can't do that. And so it has to be either or, because you cannot send mixed messages. And so while, yes, you should punish the employer who knowingly hire people who don't have work permits, yes, you should punish the people who knowingly violate the law by coming to the Bahamas and work. But how do we punish the politician who knowingly use these people to get votes, and then also give these people work voters card to vote, and they're not Bahamians? You see, and so you can't punish one without punishing the other.
So what is your proposal?
My proposal is, if you're going to have to provide punishment for one, it has to be punishment for all. For politicians who, once we find out where all the fraudulent voters cards are coming from and how they get those voters cards and which politician sanctioned that, then either that politician should be arrested for treasons against the state, and then the harsh punishment should go to the politician. So he should be arrested for treason. The employer who then therefore hire people who not supposed to link, he should be fined and punished as well too. And then also those who are here illegally should be repatriated and sent back home for repeat violation. People who are repeatedly violating our immigration laws but keep coming back, then they need to go be sentenced to jail. They need to be sentenced to prison before they go back to Haiti. And so these are some of the issues that we got to become firm with, because the migrant issue is a serious vexing problem. Will we ever get rid of it? No, we will never get rid of it all totally. And quite frankly, no society has ever survived just being a homogeneous society. And so, heterogeneous society is basically societies that evolve because of diversity. And so, we embrace the different cultures that are here legally. And so we don't mind legal immigration. So if you come here legally, you apply and we give you status, then we embrace you. But if you sneak into the back door, becoming on a ship and so on, that's not what we embrace. You can't come to our country to the back door and through the window. You got to come to the front door. We apply, then we give you a room. We give you access to our country. And if you want to be a part of us, you want to be a part of the Bahamas, then you have to learn our language, English. You got to know our national anthem. You got to know our culture. You got to understand what our Constitution says, and so on. And so these are some of the things that we must now insist that, for those who want to be citizens, you don't just become citizen by me putting in the papers. There are classes to understand what is being a Bahamian, what is a Bahamian. And so these people need to be trained as to what is Bahamian, why you are becoming a member of the Bahamas.
The problem that I have with what you just said, Cassius, is that you and I started out talking about what to do about the people other than the laborer. And you ended up very passionately talking about the laborer, the illegal immigrant. And I think that is the arc of the national conversation. I think that's why we can't ever get to how to deal with the venality that is rampant and the corruption that is rampant in our.
But did I not speak about the politician? Did I not speak about the employer as well too? I did speak about because it's a trifold issue. It's not a single-fold issue. And so you have to deal with the politicians who allow them to come in, who perhaps aided and abetting them by making sure that they get a free pass. You have to deal with the employer who hired them. So if the employer don't hire them, they ain't get no job. Remember now, when it comes to people are moving based upon where the resources are. Migrants don't go to poorer countries than themselves. They go where countries where they have more resources. But if they find that when they come to these countries, there are no opportunities for them, then the word will get back here. Don't go to the Bahamas because, they may have a be a rich country, but you can't find no jobs there. So if they cannot find any jobs, then they won't come here. They'll find somewhere else to go. But because they could find plenty of jobs, because there are resources, that's why they keep coming back.
And So what do we do? I mean, the minister says 3 strikes. Fine, and then something more serious than a fine. I remember, I feel like we are, let me put it like this. I had a conversation with somebody in Abaco who I would bet money 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, would not have wanted to even be in the same room with Lincoln Bain. And we can talk about Lincoln in a minute. But this person's view has now changed to he's the only one who's making sense.
Well, he's the only one making sense because he's probably the only one you listen to. I mean,
now the point I'm making is not whether Lincoln is making sense or not. The point is, people are frustrated, and they're so frustrated that they are now willing to make concessions to deal or to have somebody say what they are feeling and somebody do the kind of thing that they want to do. Lincoln went out to Bacardi Road with this woman to go knock down people's house. What do you think of that?
You really want me to tell you what I think of that?
It's me and you, Cassius. I ain't gonna ask you if I want to know.
I mean, I guess we get about 100 people listening to us. So, while I understand the need for being aggressive, I also understand the need for being sensible. Lincoln knew that he could not knock down those homes. You cannot knock down those homes without the court order. You know that. He knows that. And but in order to gain the publicity that you need, you got to go through it. I'm a member of a third party, so I know what needs to be done to get the theatrics going. The issue is that our people just like sensationalismness, and we like drama. We love drama. And so in order to get the headlines, you got to participate in the drama, stunts, and so on. So I've been there. For the last 20 years, I've been locked up probably more than Lincoln. So I know what to do, all right? But as I evolved as an individual, as I get more mature, I understand that there are some processes, that needs to be had. One is that, we can go in the shanty town with a bulldozer and knock down homes. But then now you have a bunch of displaced people running around. Some people say, "Oh, that ain't my concern." Yeah, as an individual, you could say that. But the government don't have the prerogative of saying that ain't your concern. Now the government have a responsibility for all the displaced people. So where you're going. So if you're here illegally, then you ship them out. But there are people who in the shanty towns who may have work permits. You understand? So how do we deal with that? And so it's not just running through with a bulldozer. It's trying to figure out how you make sure that the whole thing works after you then bulldoze the homes. Now, the government has gotten approval from the courts to do this. So why Lincoln was trying to do it is another story. The courts has already granted the government the authority to do this. But, for the government cannot just right now just grab a bulldozer and just run through. You have to remove the people. You got to say, listen, y'all got to remove, because remember now, while you may not like these people, while you don't like them because they're foreigners, they're still human beings. And we don't treat human beings as less than second-class citizens. As far as I know, the Bahamas don't engage in that. Now, there may be people who say, I don't care, they shouldn't be here. That may be your opinion, but that's not my opinion. My opinion is that, listen, these are human beings, and we have to make sure that whether they're here illegally or what, that we don't treat them like they are less than human. Because remember now, some 100 years ago, all of us were treated the very same way. All us black people were treated like less than humans. We were treated like we were dogs. So it ain't just the Haitians. Bahamians were treated that way too. And so now that we perhaps are a little more better, we don't treat another group of race of people as if they're less than humans. That's not what I've been brought up to believe. That's not what I stand for. And so, yes, they are here illegally. Yes, we need to move them, but we have to do it in a humane way. That's my message, and that's what I believe. And so I don't believe in just displacing people, because, like I said, today or tomorrow, the Bahamas is really, if you really look at our economic situation, we're really on the cusp of some very serious financial economic problems. So today or tomorrow, our country could collapse. Our dollar could collapse. Then what? We on a boat heading to Miami for them to treat us the way we treat Haitians. So we got to be very careful how we treat people, because what you sow is what you reap. And so while, like I said, I'm not in support of illegal immigrants, so I don't want anybody who listens to this think that I'm supporting it. I just in support of treating everybody humanely as possible.
You raise a point that has already been, that's already part of our reality. The fact is, there's a whole couple of cities in Miami that were populated by Bahamians who had to go to Florida to try to find jobs that could support their aspirations.
I made a joke one time ago. I was in Barbados several years ago, and the same type of attitude we had towards Haitians, the Barbadians had towards the Guyanese. And so I couldn't understand it why, the people were talking bad about the Guyanese and as if they were second-class citizens. And I smile that today Guyana is now the richest country in South America and Central America and in CARICOM. They just discovered $1 trillion worth of oil. So the very same people that they scorned are now richer than all us.
In fact, at this last CARICOM meeting, just to underline your point, Guyana was the only country that was able to pledge $2 million to this new fund that they started to deal with climate change.
Yep, because Guyana now is the richest country in CARICOM. But yesterday, They were the third poorest in in CARICOM. Their per capita GDP per capita was 5,000. Next year, it'll be 32,000. And so I'm saying this to say that, listen, while we, as a country, we enjoy certain pleasures, and I understand we want to preserve the Commonwealth, we got to always remember to ever treat people with inhumane treatment. We got to treat people with dignity, no matter who they are, whether they're here legally or illegally. Because the same God that died for you died for them too, and the same God that loves you loved them too. And so that's my philosophy. So everyone I meet, I treat with respect. And so I try to teach my children that. I try to teach my family that listen, no matter who they are, you have to treat everybody with respect. Because I've been to school in Tennessee, which is a southern country. And I know the injustice that was done to Black Americans because I lived there for 5 years. And, you still see the racism. One time, somebody passed and was calling me a nigger and this and that and so on and so on. And, to me, I couldn't understand it because, in the Bahamas, everybody's a nigger. So you can call me nigger all you want. I don't take, right? So, but to see the psychological scars that the Black Americans still had to go through, and living through that and living with them and seeing the hatred between the races, coming back home, I find it very difficult to treat another Black person without dignity. I mean, yes, they have poverty in Haiti. Yes, they have, I guess they may not worship the religion that we worship, but the religion that we worship commanded us to love everybody. And so whether you from there or from here, we got to treat everybody with respect. And so, this is one of the commandments that the Lord told the children of Israel. When you go into the land, remember the foreigner. Remember, he said, remember the foreigner, because you yourself used to be foreigners in Egypt. Treat the foreigner with dignity. He said that specifically. You used to be a foreigner in Egypt. And so for me, it's the same thing. Remember the foreigner. While you're supposed, if you're here illegally, we can send you back. And we ain't gonna treat you bad. We can send you back. But if you're here as a guest in our country, we will treat you with dignity. Everybody needs to be treated with dignity. And so if I can get this message across to the Bahamian people, but I know that the anger and the bitterness that we hold in our heart towards this issue has somehow blinded us, because I was on a talk show the other day and somebody said we need to put them on a boat and just burn the boat up as they go back. How do you reach to the point in your mind where you want to destroy and kill people? You understand? Just because they leave because they have their misfortune. Like I say, today or tomorrow, we are one day away from a collapse in our economy because of mismanagement. And you all know this economy has been mismanaged for a long time. One day away. Why do you think the government's squeezing us with all its taxes? Because we have no money. The country is flat broke. And so any given day now, this whole thing could come crumbling down, and we find ourselves now building boats to try head to Miami because we want a better way of life. We have to be very careful. That's my message. We got to be very careful, because whatever you sow, you shall reap.
And you're not even close to wrong.
Well, I hope not.
I feel like you don't get me wrong. I feel like you preaching.
Mm-hmm. No, but Quincy, it's anger fuels anger, bitterness fuels bitterness, and when you preach a message of hatred and bitterness towards a race of people because of a situation that they didn't choose to be in. Remember now, they didn't choose to be in the situation. Their political leaders put them in that. Their political leaders made bad choices, and those choices led the whole country to collapse. From Papa Doc, Duvalier, then you had other influences coming in, kidnapping their president. You had other major countries coming in and sanctioning them. You had France coming in there, putting pressure on them to pay back repatriation for the revolution in the 1800s. And then you had all this pressure on these people that, and the very same people, while we may say what you want about Haiti, right? When the Haitian Revolution took place in the 1800s, Haitian Constitution made it legal for any Black people anywhere in the Caribbean to come to Haiti to live without pressure of being enslaved. That was their decree, right? They wanted all Black people in the Caribbean to be free. And so, yes, after that, of course, now the Americans, the French, all of the European powers say, okay, you want to be free, we can strangle you. And that they did. They strangled them to the point now that they could have never caught themselves. Then you get leaders like Papa Doc and them who were all greedy into themselves. They took all of the money from the people and sent money to their bank accounts in Switzerland. And then you had, other major players coming in, exploiting their resources and so on. And so Haiti's been on a downward spiral for a long time, not because of the people's fault, it's because of damn political leaders. And so now, we got the same problem. While you get great behemoths, we've hired some leaders that have made some questionable decisions of the Bahamas when it comes to our finances, wasting our money. We've seen the last election, the last administration where money's been wasted. We've seen the administration before that where money's been wasted. And every election, we see this wastage, corruption. We hear it, we know it, we've sing songs about it. We've had these people before the courts. And so, we are one step away if we don't be careful of being another Haiti. And so if we don't be careful of managing our affairs, we are one step away because we could mismanage our affairs and everything collapse. And then what? We don't want nobody to treat us with disdain and being inhumane because our political leaders made a bad decision. And so with that being said, I just think we just need to show more love towards humanity and also be mature about it. But I don't speak hatred, bitterness, anger towards no race of people. I don't speak this anger and fighting and so the last show I was on, Quincy, I tell you no lie, Quincy, I hung up and I got off the show because I could not be a part of that conversation. Because everybody was talking about killing and how we would have killed them and throw them and drown them and what the hell you all talking about? What kind of country this is? 100 years ago, all us come on the ship together. They drop them off there and drop us off here. What you talking about?
Cash, you owe a lot. Okay, so you and I are in complete accord. I'm going to, and I've mentioned over the last couple of weeks that we've changed the format of the show here. Normally, we don't do call-ins. We didn't used to do call-ins. But we've relaxed that policy, and if people feel compelled to call and contribute to the conversation, we've started delightfully and happily taking those calls. So if you don't mind, apparently we have a call that I'd like to take. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Caller, you are with us. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
You're live on Political Review.
Good afternoon, Mr. Parker, and good afternoon, Mrs. Stewart.
Hi, good afternoon.
Mrs. Stewart, I've been following you through various talk shows, and you do have a lot to offer. And most of the times I agree with what you're saying. You're passionate and you're well informed. Now I'm listening to you now, and I'm agreeing with you with everything that you say. But here's the problem. As I listen to you express how we ought to treat our brother and sister and sisters, brothers and sisters from wherever they are, with the dignity that they deserve, blah, blah. Yes, I'm listening to you and I'm agreeing with you. Here's the thing, though. When you talk about we should not treat people with indignity, I couldn't agree with you more. But now we have to make sure the same sentiments that you're expressing and you would like for us to keep in mind when you're treating other people ought to be practiced here. Now, allegedly now, I would like to know, how can you justify arresting women and putting them and flinging them in buses here in this country? They're saying we're moving towards first world. Throwing them in buses, women, and locking them up. You have a mother, you have a sister, you have daughters. Without access to hygiene and the likes. In our country. So you preach to me and you tell how we should treat others. When here in this country, our own are being treated like down in the South. And the like. How do you justify that?
Listen, there is no justification for any woman being treated the way you described. So we didn't get to that yet. We were just talking with them. But you are absolutely right. There is no justification for the police to treat Bahamian women like that or anybody. And so this is why we have laws against that. And this is why they have recourse. And so if they feel that they were wrong in any which way, then they need to bring the necessary lawsuit against the police force for for the treatment they deserve. Nobody in the Bahamas, nobody should be treated, women, particularly women, because of their strength and their physical structure, should be flinged and thrown around like that. Nobody should be done that.
Well, perhaps I spoke too quickly.
So I agree with you 1,000%. We're on the same page. We don't have any disagreement. You don't have no disagreement from me with that. We just didn't get to that part yet.
Yeah. See, that's the thing, right? Is that nothing is isolated. You know, there are so many moving parts and so many things that relate one thing to the next. And the caller brings it up, and I'm glad she did, because the next question that I have for you is in relationship to what the Minister of National Security said about the Consolidated Sexual Offenses and Domestic Violence Unit. So what I'm going to do is take a break, Cassius, and we're overdue for our 5 o'clock break. And then when we come back, we can get into this issue of domestic violence, the new unit proposed by the police. I also want to talk to you about what happened with the Consumer Price Index over the course of the week, and politicians and their public disclosures. But I also want to get back to Lincoln Bain and activism, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because you are able to bring your personal experience as opposed to armchair quarterbacking on the issue. Eh? So if you'll hang on, we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Okay, no problem. I'm here.
Thanks. Folks, we're going to take a break. It is 6 minutes after 5 on March 5th, 2023. You're tuned into the Political Review with K. Quincy Parker. That's me. We'll see you after the break.
The 58th Carifta Games is coming April 7th to April 10th. Tickets are on sale now online at Carifta50.com or at the Thomas A. Robinson National Stadium, Western Grand Entrance. For more details, email tickets at Carifta50.com or call 605-4051.
Whether your business is in-store, on the go, or both, let Fidelity work with you to maximize your customers' payment options with a fixed or mobile terminal so that you never miss a sale. It's safer than cash and more convenient so that you can take your business anywhere. For details, contact a business development officer today at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport, or visit our website at fidelitygroup.com.
Beulah gal, can you believe this? We are now the patrol queens of the neighborhood.
We now large and in charge. So we need to check out what's going on in everybody's yard. What about that gun that we know that Junior and his homeboys just ran out? Can we report that too?
Of course we can.
But we could be in deep trouble if they find out.
We need to report what we see, Beulah. When you call Crime Stoppers, they just answer your call in Miami.
So then we can report everything? Guns, where they hiding the drugs, who shoot who part of which gang, or who disturbing the peace with the loud music and the motorcycles.
Then our neighborhood will be the best in the Bahamas, and everybody gonna want to come live here. And then our house price will go up, gal.
So what we waiting on? What's the number?
If you see something, say something. Let us all pitch in and stop the crime before it's your time. Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands. Or text us through the Crack Crime Bahamas app. Stop the crime before it's your time.
Carifta is almost here, and Alive has partnered with TCL for you to capture gold at the 2023 Carifta Games. Switch to Alive and get a free TCL 30 Plus or TCL 30 SE on select Alive postpaid plans to share pictures and videos of our Bahamian athletes as they hit the tracks to win gold. Visit your nearest Alive store or mobile van location and come gold with us at the 2023 Carifta Games.
The Grand Bahama News is available every Tuesday in the Nassau Guardian. Buy your local paper at Freeport convenience stores, Western Bakery, DeGregory's Fine Foods, and Bellevue Gifts. Want to reach your Grand Bahama customers? Then call Barefoot Marketing at 827-4578 or message them for ad rates via their Facebook page. Advertising opportunities now include classified ads too. Keep up with all the latest Grand Bahama news in the Nassau Guardian newspaper every Tuesday.
Do you know you can get your business cards designed and printed for as low as 18 cents a card? If it's a poster you want, you can pay as little as $6 a square foot. If your print needs are short or long run, digital printing, wide format, or print consultation, call the best. Call Print Masters. Print Masters' goal is to provide its clients with the highest level of personal, professional service at an affordable price. Our state-of-the-art technology also makes working together efficient and easy. Laminations, business cards, flyers, posters, window and floor decals are just a few of the digitized print services offered at Print Masters.
Let Print Masters bring your masterpiece to life.
Located in the Nassau Guardian Building, telephone 302-2361.
At a time when jobs are hard to find, crime is a concern, and Bahamians are uncertain about the future of the country, there is one paper you can rely on as your source of news and commentary. The Nassau Guardian delves deeper into the issues. We ask the tough questions. We tell your stories. If you haven't already, pick up a copy today. The Nassau Guardian. News and views that matter since 1844.
This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM.
Bring 'em out, bring 'em out. It's hard to yell when the barrel's in your mouth.
Come on.
Bring 'em out, bring 'em out. Hey. Bring 'em out, bring 'em out. Yeah. Bring 'em out, bring 'em out. Hey. Bring 'em out, bring 'em out.
VIP coming live from the VIP. Heard the nightlife, lost life without me. Most feds in the state wanna see by me. The whole city got pissed, heard he got 3. That other rapper got a hit, but shouted he not out. Who set the city on fire soon as he got free? The king back now. Raws don't even know how to act now. Hit the club, strippers getting naked before I sat down. Still ballin', money stacked tall and shack now. Still push a button to let the roof on the lack down. I'm on the road doing shows, put my Mac down. Mississippi to Philly, Albuquerque to Chat Town. I got the crowd yelling.
Bring 'em out, bring 'em out.
I'm a hot girl yelling.
Bring 'em out.
Hey. Yep, yes, sir. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Political Review. My name is Quincy Parker. It is my absolute pleasure to be with you on this fine Sunday here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We are the most beautiful country in the world. It is absolutely indisputable. If you've never been to the Exuma Keys Land and Sea Park, you have no idea what beauty lies in the heart of your country, and I encourage you to go, get on a boat, leave from Coral Harbor, cruise up through the Keys, and go to the Exuma Land and Sea Park now. Well, no, don't go now, go after 6. And then you go to Cat Island and go to Orange Creek and wait for sunset or sunrise, and you will see what beauty is. If you go to old bite in Cat Island, right opposite where the old police station used to be, and just sit on the side of the road and let the sound of the water make you feel like you are something. It takes you away, ladies and gentlemen. I could tell you about Bryland until the cows come home. If you haven't been to Harbor Island, I'm sorry for you. Especially if you haven't been in the 90s and early 2000s. It's become, a bit of a destination now with all the marinas and the boutique hotels. But still, it has something of its old charm left, and you should see it. I'm gonna stop there because I feel very I feel very like I'm on the verge of preaching, and I don't want to lose the train of thought that I had before we were made to go to break. So we're talking today with the leader of the Bahamas Democratic Movement, Mr. Cassius Stewart, who is, as I have said, himself a political activist, and we're gonna get back to Lincoln Bain in a few minutes, because I do want to talk about political activism, especially at a time like this, in the middle of a political administration, halfway between being elected and a new election being mandated by law, and whether or not political activism has a real chance of influencing government policy, whether it can influence how the electorate votes, and so on and so forth. But before we do that, I did want to get Cassius's thoughts on the new sexual violence and domestic violence unit that the Attorney General talked about, which he said should be open, quote unquote, very shortly. So Cassius, again, it's a pleasure to have you on the Political Review, and can you give us your thoughts on that?
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I've been very aggressive, and I have very strong feelings when it comes to sexual crimes. I'm a proponent of castration, and I don't in any which way like the fact that people could rape children, rape women, rape elderly women, even rape boys, and still walk around with their penis. I don't understand that. I mean, for me, people call me draconian, but that's fine. At least I know that these people will never rape again. I have to put you in Fox Hill Prison and feed you every day. I got to put you up there and make sure that I take care of you. And, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year just to take care of these fellas. And, for me, like I said, I take a very, 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 very firm approach when it comes to sexual crimes. Now, this unit investigation, I think it's necessary. I think, when it comes to sexual crimes, sometimes people are more docile and people are afraid to talk and people don't want to be heard and so on. And so, but it's a very serious thing because you scar these kids, you scar women. And imagine that 10-year-old little daughter who was raped by her father, that's horrendous. And so activities like that, for me, I am very, very draconian when it comes to measures like that. And so castration would be on top of my agenda. And so for those who don't like it, that's just my approach. That's my opinion. You could put lotion and pet and powder them all you want, but I ain't lotion and pet and powder them. I'm sorry.
And I want to point out something that you talked about briefly. You mentioned it there about how much we spend to take care of them. And we spend $14,000 per inmate per year, more or less. And that's a 2021 number, a 2020 number. So it's maybe more.
Yeah, more than that.
Yeah, to look after. Sorry, that's not a 2020. Oh, that was the point of it was that was a 2016 number, and that we need to find what the 2021 and 2022 number is.
Carlos Reed and Dave Burrows' new book will have all the latest statistics. They will have all the latest statistics. I bought their book, so they have all the latest statistics. But interesting enough, I think we spend almost $20,000 a year on cigarettes for these guys. So, and so, for me, like I said, my approach is always, I have a mother, I have 4 daughters, I have a wife, and, God forbid, something happens. But for me, we have to be able to show people that, listen, if you violate the law, then there's punishment. In management and marketing, there is something called, how do you make a decision? So there's a mathematical equation. It's called the marginal cost, which is MC. If the marginal cost is equal or greater to the marginal benefit, then no decision is made because the cost is too high. And so you make a decision if the marginal benefit is equal to or greater than the marginal cost. So if the benefits are greater than the cost, you make a decision. When these people decide to make a decision to go and rape, if they know that the marginal cost will be high, castration, they won't have a penis anymore. More than likely, they will think about taking down and raping some young child or raping some women. And so we have to let them know that the punishment is harsh. Now, we can get kickbacks, right? You can get kickbacks from these groups in America who say, oh, this is cruel and harsh and barbaric. El Salvador is dealing with that right now. And Salvador, last month was considered the number 1 crime capital in the world. Their president has really cracked down now. And Salvador is considered the safest country in the world because they cracked down on all of the gang violence. They arrested all of them and put them in all in solitary confinement and so on. So there's no more gang violence, right? They're not ordering hits anymore. But of course, the very same human rights organization is saying, oh, this is inhumane treatment that you're treating these prisoners. That's right. But these are the same people who are killing everybody. I mean, what do these people want? You want us to fight for innocent people or you want to fight for the criminals? And so the same way. So if we now enact harsh punishment for people who rape women in the Bahamas, castration, you will get kickbacks from the human rights organizations. Oh, that's harsh and inhumane. But let their mommy get raped. Let their daughter get raped and then see what they say. And so we got to be able to let the criminals know that when the marginal cost is equal to or greater than the marginal benefit, no decision is made. That's a basic law in marketing. And so we need to enact that in law. And so when they realize that the penalties are so harsh, and this is why when you read scripture, scripture has a very interesting thing when God said, for these crimes, it's punishment by death. It's basically saying that the cost is too high for you to commit that crime, so think twice about doing it. And that's what we need. We need to be able to think twice about doing it. Because, when you have soft penalties, New York is now enacted, and Joe Biden has just said yesterday that he is going to veto a bill from the Democrats, which is now lowering the penalty for carjacking and other penalties and so on. New York has done the same thing. So they're lowering penalties all throughout America now. They're going crazy now. For us, we can't follow that method because we have to make sure that when it comes to the law is felt. And the reason why people don't break the law because they know they have something to lose. Whether it's their life or whether, in the case of rapists, whether it's their penis, they won't break the law. That's just my opinion.
The challenge that we have in law enforcement is always consistency in enforcing the penalty, isn't it?
Yeah.
The penalties are on the books, and one could argue that the penalties on the books are harsh enough, but they're just not enforced as consistently as they would need to be to provide the incentive or the disincentive to commit crime that we hope for, and I think that is every once in a while, you'll hear a government talk about fixing, really attacking crime or war on crime. And what they always do is they always seek to introduce harsher penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the harshness of the penalty, if the penalty is not enforced, it doesn't matter how harsh it is. And that's my challenge.
Yeah, and see the whole gamut of this crime issue is, whilst we deal with penalties, then we take a step back and deal with the the unit that is being enacted by the police force, you know. Remember now, police officers, the Commissioner of Police, the Minister of National Security cannot fix the crime problem. You know, the police are there to deal with crime after it's already committed. So they had to deal with crime after they commit it. In order to deal with crime, we got to get to the lowest common denominator. The police is not the solution to crime because, you know, for the police, if they're apprehending the criminals, then they're doing a good job. So they're doing a good job apprehending the criminals. But the problem is the problem already exists. The crime has already been committed. How do we create an individual that knows how to make the right choices, that knows right from wrong, that knows how to obey by social norms and societal norms, that abide by the rules and regulation of society? The issue is, how do we go to the lowest common denominator, to the family, to the schools, when they're young, teaching them the right values and morals and principles to obey rules, to obey parameters. We live in a world right now that don't seem to want to operate with parameters. We think that, you know, everything is a free all and this is a new generation and we, you know, us old people really making no sense because it's a new generation, we could do whatever the hell we want. The problem is when you live like that, you live without parameters. And when you live without parameters, you are destined to fail. And so the reason why, you know, you are free to go on the road on a motorbike and speed as much as you want without a helmet. But what happens when you crash? You see, you can be a detriment to yourself and a detriment to others. And so this is the reason why there are speed limit laws and there's also rules to put on helmet so that in the event that you crash, there's a safety mechanism in place. But we think that we can live without that safety mechanism. We cannot live without that safety mechanism. And we cannot live without parameters. Everything in the universe exists with parameters. This morning when everybody woke up, the sun rose. Why? Because the sun has parameters. The sun knows exactly what time to come up and what time to go down. The moon has parameters. That knows what time to come up and goes down. When we drive on West Bay Street, we know that the sea has a parameter and it knows exactly how far to go. But human beings, we figure we can live without parameters. We cannot live without parameters. That's why we have laws and regulations. And when we violate laws and regulation, there has to be penalties. When anything in the universe operates outside of its parameters, it's destructive. When the sea decides to come across its border, what happens? We have tsunami and it's destructive. If the sun decides it ain't coming up tomorrow, then you know what's going to happen, right? Everything will die. And so if the moon decides it ain't going to rise tomorrow, you know what happens, right? We can have floodings all over the world. And so we have to remain within the parameters so that we can live within the guidelines of which we're supposed to live. And when we operate without parameters, it is destructive behavior.
And we pay a price for it.
And a great price too.
Yeah. And the thing is, one of the things that challenges me is we are living and making decisions that we are not going to really feel the effects of. And I think that's a part of our problem, right? A part of our problem in terms of dealing with so many of these challenges is that we don't realize that what we are dealing with now is the result of the choices made by the generation before us.
Yes. Yes.
And in some cases, the generation before that.
Yes.
So if we make choices now, the real effect is going to be felt by our children and our grandchildren. And I think that's the problem, is that there's no immediate, because we are people who want instant gratification, right? We want to feel something happen right away. If I do X, I want Y to happen as a direct result of me having done X, and I want Y to happen right now. Mm-hmm. So if we put a new regime in place,
yes,
that is supposed to arrest the development of criminality in young men and young women in this country, what you will see in the 20 years after having put that regime in place is nothing. And then all of a sudden, in year 21, the children who will now be old enough to be the ones who make those decisions will have grown up under the new regime, and then you will start to see some change. But we are not, as a society, we're not willing to invest in the future. We want to invest in right now. and we want an immediate return for our investment. And I don't know that there's anything that can be done about that, Cass.
Well, there's always something that can be done. I think what happens is that, we find that we have so much different dysfunctional aspects of our societies because we are copying policies from America, when we decide to rule out corporal punishment in the schools. Now, I get it why, there are some people are really harsh when they're trying to discipline their children. And so you got to be, some people don't know how to discipline. They try to kill their children, Yeah. But I was disciplined when I was young, and I was very bad when I was young, and I got a lot of beating. And, I thank God that my grandfather really disciplined me because I probably would have been smoking grass or selling dope on the street right now. But you see, it's making sure that we could hold fast to the discipline. So we say to now our young kids, we can't discipline them. In the schools, the teachers can't discipline them. And rightfully so, it's who's going to discipline them and at which type and so on, the severity of all and so on. I can understand all that. But, the minute we start to mimic America of no discipline, and now the child could call the police for you if you discipline them and so on, then that same child, when they get mad, grab a gun and go and shoot up the school and so on. And we've seen that they shoot up the malls and so on. It's as if because they have no parameters. Nobody, and I'm going to repeat it again slowly, nothing in the universe exists without parameters. You may think you exist without parameters, but nothing in the universe exists without parameters. So when we let our children, we want our children to just grow up making their own choices and their own decisions. That's a recipe for disaster. Children need to know that there are parameters in which to operate in. My children, when, I made sure I teach them right from wrong in the house. And so that when they go to society, they behave like how they behave in my house. So if they were in my house and they're writing on my walls and cursing me out and doing whatever they want to do, when they go out in the wider society, they do the very same thing because I failed to enforce discipline in my home. My home is what they call, I call it a mini Bahamas. This is a mini Bahamas in the Bahamas. And so if we're failing in the mini Bahamas, when they go outside the doors in the big Bahamas, they will do the very same thing. And that's what we're saying. We're saying these behaviors that are replicated on the streets are the same behaviors that are done in the homes. Because, of course, it now begets one another. In other words, I wasn't trained to discipline. Now, I don't train my children to discipline, and they don't train their children to discipline. So nobody has any discipline. And now we want to route the police officer. We want to route the commissioner of the police for rude children. The commissioner of police is not responsible for your rude children, ma'am or sir. You are responsible for them. And because you allow them to fester and grow out of hand, then you want to go to the doctor and say, oh, doctor, I got this cut. The doctor said, you got gangrene. You got to cut the whole leg off because now ain't nothing we could do. And so we've allowed these children to metastasize and we allow them to fester to the point where they're almost irreparable and nothing we can do to salvage them. And this is why we have to be able to say, listen, we need to operate within parameters. And rightfully so, for me, it's across the whole spectrum in society, from the family to the politician on the top. Everybody got to understand that there are parameters in which we operate. And once we obey these laws, then we will have a functioning society. But because we allow these children to fester, then we blame the police for not doing it. The police job is only to catch them and lock them up. Oh yeah, there's a backlog in cases in the courts because we got so many different cases that the court can't get to your cases because we got so much problems. So let's see if we can have some other temporary courts so that we can deal and try to get through some of these backlogs and so on. But it's a holistic approach when it comes to dealing with the problems that we're facing in our society. I do believe that we can fix it. There may be a generation that we may be willing to lose, but we have to now invest in the younger generation so that we can teach them the right way to go, the do's and the don'ts and so on. And so everything these young people going through, I grew up in Camp Road, so ain't nothing they tell me that I don't know. Ain't nothing they tell me they're doing that I didn't do. And I could tell you, if I came through it, I came out of it, they could come out of it too. And so normally when I have an opportunity to speak to schools, like I got one on Thursday, I try to reach these young people and tell them to listen, you could make the right choices. It is possible to make the right choice.
I wanted to ask you about the chronic health care issues that we have in the hospital, but I'm gonna take that one off the table
No, let's touch that. That is critical. Let's touch that. We have to touch that.
All right.
Because I've heard the minister talk that, right now, because after COVID, we have all these chronic cases in the hospital. And part of the problem is we've always had chronic cases in the Bahamas, chronic non-communicable diseases, such as hypertension and diabetes and so on, right? The Bahamas have 155,000 and counting people with diabetes. That's almost 40% of the country, right? But the number one killer of Bahamians is hypertension, high blood pressure. And then we also have another major problem with cancer. You have cancer among women and men, colon cancer, breast cancer, and so on. They give us this thing that is BRCA1, BRCA2 gene. We closely related. That's the reason why we're seeing this gene mutation in women in the Bahamas and so on. And so we have all these chronic issues. The problem is that, why is so many Bahamians as a country have so much that has diabetes? Why is so many Bahamians as a country, highest per capita in the world, have hypertension? And why is so many Bahamians have cancer? That's the question I need to be answered. And so, I've been doing a research on this, and I was very, very curious as to why we have such high levels of cancer. And, it led me to a town in England. I can't remember the town, where Winston Churchill, it was the prime minister at the time, he had ordered these chemical tests on its citizens. Apparently, they decided we're not going to do it in England anymore. We're going to do it in Nassau. So I'm not sure if you ever heard of there was two tests called, it was done in Nassau, where Winston Churchill ordered cadmium to be sprayed over the population. And only recently the files were declassified, and it showed that the population in Canada where they were doing the test had a high level of cancer. And now we see the very same thing in the Bahamas. So it led me to believe that, is it related to the fact that, the British government was testing live chemical weapons on Bahamians? And is that relating to how we have high levels of cancer? I don't know, but I want to find out why we have such high levels of prostate cancer, why we have high levels of hypertension. When you look at the medical industry, we bring in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of hypertension medications. We bring in hundreds of millions of dollars. Are they creating a market within the Bahamas by whatever they feed us so that we could have hypertension and diabetes? I don't know, but I'm concerned. And so these questions has to be asked because, we are a sick nation. And I would want us to speak about this every opportunity we get because our people are dying. We are dying, but we don't talk about it. 40% of the country get hypertension, diabetes, and then the rest get hypertension. So that's just with everybody. Everybody's sick. And so how do we build a country for the next 50 years when we're dying? And so the Minister of Health and, the agencies, we have to do a forensic audit on the Bahamians to find out why are we so sick as a nation, one. But also for those who are sick, we got to provide them with the proper care. We have to build that hospital. We got to be able to spend money on building a proper hospital and not have these people who are sick stuffed down in A&E on a trolley for days without the proper care. I mean, they're getting care, but of course they're uncomfortable. They can't use the bathroom because they're stuck on a trolley. If they have to use a urinal or, you understand? So it's not humane. And so we have to stop playing games when it comes to our country. We waste a lot of money in this country. The monies that we've been wasting, we could have been building whether 1 room, 2 room, 3 room, 4 room, for these people to be able to accommodate in the hospital, keep expanding. And so, healthcare is a very, very serious issue for me because, I see how sick we are as a nation. And, we got to be able to fix this problem because in 50 years, all of us will be wiped out and we won't have no more Bahamians as we know it because most of us are already sick. And, whether in cancer is hypertension, whether in hypertension is diabetes, and there's so much of us, we just call it sugar. It ain't sugar. That means you dying. So we got to fix this problem.
These are the leading causes of death, not just in the Bahamas, but worldwide. Right? Chronic non-communicable diseases kill, according to the CDC, 41 million people a year. that is about 7 out of 10 deaths around the world.
The only problem with us is we ain't got no people in our country. We have a very, very small country now. If you have 155,000 people sick with diabetes, we got 400,000. That's almost half the population. That's with diabetes. You understand?
Yes.
And so we can't worry about what the CDC say, because really that's all of us. And so we got to figure out a way. How do we now provide proper health care, but also fix this problem of this non-communicable diseases? How are we getting it, and why are we getting it? And don't give me no garbage that we closely related. You know, they're saying because of BRCA1, we cousins and so on. Then the royal families, them should have been wiped out long time, because they only marry their cousin. Only Harry gonna marry that other woman. And so I don't understand why we allow them to tell us it's nonsense. But, you know, I think that we just need to bring in some independent scientists to test our water, to test our air, to test the food that is coming in. And I think the Ministry of Agriculture should be doing random sampling on all the meat that comes into this country. We have to test them for whatever chemicals they may have. We have to test the food on a consistent basis, because something is killing us and we need to find out what it is. And we cannot just say, oh, yeah, we can pump some more money into the hospital. When everybody died, and, you know, that doesn't make a difference anymore. And so test the meat that are coming in. Test the water. You know, of course, you know that the Americans dumped some, I mean, according to some literature I've read, that they had some chemicals, some of the nuclear waste chemicals dumped in our waters. Operation Ozone and Operation Nassau, that was done by the British government, that sprayed cadmium over the Bahamas and other chemicals to test see how we would respond if Russia had done it to them. And so all these things that we have, and we have not had one independent scientist come and say, oh, we found out the reason why y'all are dying. Y'all having hypertension, diabetes, and so on. Don't just swallow what they say. Something is causing it. There's always a cause. What is the cause? I need to find out what is the cause so that we can correct it.
Yeah. So the next thing that I want to, you know what? We only got 20 minutes left, so let me skip. I'm going to skip straight to dealing with Lincoln, or asking about Lincoln, right? And not Lincoln particularly, but this concept of political activism, Lincoln Payne, Adrian Francis, these are, we know, as a matter of fact, we know both of those guys, eh? I
know them very well.
I grew up with Adrian. In fact, when I started this show, he was my partner, but he felt compelled to go in a different direction. And we know Lincoln from, we were all children. So these are not people who are unknown to us, but
no, they're all members of the BPM as well too. So I mean, I know them.
Yeah. So my question to you is, first of all, with regard to Lincoln in particular, what do you think is going on with him? What do you think of what he's been doing?
Civil disobedience by Mohandas Gandhi say it's designed to invoke a response. And so all civil disobedience has one purpose in mind, and it is designed to invoke a response. You need a response from government on whatever issue, so you engage in what we call civil disobedience. Okay? My perspective is that, I've been very politically active, and I've been arrested several times in the House of Assembly for civil disobedience. And, for me, I when there's a need for civil disobedience, then I'm front of the line. I'm there. My issue with the last demonstration was, I'm not sure what the issue was about, one, with CARICOM. So I have several issues with that. One is that, first of all, we had some international guests, right, in the town. If me and my wife have an argument and we have guests come in the house, I'm not going to row with my wife in front of them. I can wait till they go, and then we can finish our row. Okay? What I do believe, though, is that if Lincoln's protest would have been that the Davis administration did not give third parties a voice to be an observer in the meetings, then I would have been there. but you went there to talk about immigration. Now, the question is, name me one of those countries that were represented here that did not have the very same problem that we have. So by protesting with them, where would that have gone? Because all of them got the same problem. All of them got the same illegal immigration problem. For me, though, I believe that the protest should have been, listen, you have CARICOM coming in. You have members of the third-party organizations here. We are not given a voice. In fact, the Davis administration will even send you an invitation to none. So me as a leader of a political party, now Christie and Ingram, those administrations, they were very sensible. This administration, they don't sell us an invitation for nothing to be a part of nothing. So his protest would have been more powerful if he was arguing the point that, listen, we want a voice to be an observer in the CARICOM meeting so that we could be a part of the conversation. You see? And so the argument should have been, listen, yes, we want to sit around the table and give our points as to what do we do with Haiti, as to what we do with the CARICOM community. That would have been more powerful in my instance. Now, there's a protest going on. There's a protest going on in Miami that I have issues with. The reason why I have issues with that is that, I don't want anybody to be fooled one bit in thinking that the American media is interested in just, saying one administration. They will be glad to call all of us corrupt and dogs and this and that. I'm very cautious. And so for you to take the protest out to them, I don't disagree. I don't agree with that. If you have issues with the Brave Davis administration for whatever issues, you have a big country, you could protest right here. And so for me to go to Miami, to take your fight to another man's territory, that is a no-no in my book. Some people may be justified in doing it, but our internal issues are our internal issues. These people don't love us. Remember now, countries do not have morals, they only have interests. They only care about us, what they can get from us. They don't really care about us. Once you have that in mind, you'll understand that, listen, let's fight for whatever we want in the Bahamas. Don't take that crap out there in front of nobody and so on. And so if I have a dispute with my family, we can row, we can cuss, we can carry on amongst ourselves. When we go outside, we may still be mad, but at least you ain't know we mad. And that's my position. I've been very harsh with the Davis administration. I've been very harsh with the Christie administration. I've been very harsh with the Ingram administration. And so I've been very harsh with all those administrations. But, I know how to show respect when it's time to show respect. And I know how to stand up to them when I see injustice. And so for Lincoln and those, as I get older, as I mature as a politician, as an individual, I realize that let's keep our fight on the ground. We don't have to expose our nonsense over that saying, the government issue is, quite frankly, the issue was that they had some very serious security breaches. I was aware of that. They had some, not breaches, some security concerns about heads of state. You had the Prime Minister of Canada here. You had John Kerry from the United States government who was here. You had several high-ranking delegations from around the world that they were told that we cannot have security breaches. So they were very harsh because they didn't want to violate the security breaches. The issue is you're protesting for what? If you would say, listen, we want a voice in CARICOM, count me in. But you can't go to protesting with no illegal immigration because every single one of them country got the same darn problem.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And it actually kind of leads me to my real question, right? I know you, I know Adrian, I know you, the two of you in particular, I can say I personally believe are sincere and have a particular agenda that you are trying to get done. I can't say the same about Lincoln, and that bothers me. I don't know what he's trying to achieve, other than to make a fuss or make a name for himself.
Yeah.
And I got an issue with that.
No, I mean, not only you, many Bahamians feel the same way, but there are also many Bahamians who believe in him. I do have my issues with Lincoln, and that I'm not going to discuss that now, but probably in time it'll come out. But the issue is that the Bahamian people are hungry for. I'm not sure what they're hungry for, but Lincoln is very vocal and he's doing some radical things that needs to be done. Sometimes it needs to be done. But, sometimes you don't need to do certain things. I think sometimes you need to show the people how you're going to lead the Bahamas, if you want to lead the Bahamas, and how we're going to build the Bahamas. And so it's not all about tearing down someone for you to gain. It's about also showing how can you build, how do we build a healthcare structure? How do we build young people? How do we build the agriculture sector, the educational system, the social welfare system? It's about building the country. And so, while we've been piggybacking between the FNM and the PLP back and forth for the last 2,000 years, at some point, I think the people are going to catch it. I hope they don't catch it in another 2,000 years, because I sure I ain't going to be here. But, we need leaders, and the problem is that you don't need people to take over. See, the problem is we keep hiring people to lead our country who have no experience, one, or who just, they're mouth big. I don't want to hire you in my company, or you rowing about the conditions of the plane, and of course the untimeliness of the plane, and now I can make you the captain just because you're rowing. I need to know that you're experienced, that you could fly the plane, eh? And so that's one of the issues. And so I believe, though, that I think the Bahamian people, the more they have access to information, because of course you have all these new social media platforms now where you have TikTok and WhatsApp and Instagram and so on, that they can now gather more information to make more right choices. And so not only coming from one area. One time ago, it was just, if you didn't get on a radio show or a TV show, your voice was never heard. Now, nobody really needs a radio show or TV show anymore. One TikTok or one voice, one Facebook post, and 1 million people see it. And so, but it's about, for the Bahamian people, I think we deserve better in leadership. One, we deserve better in governance. Two, and we really have a beautiful country. When I've traveled to every Caribbean island there is. I've been to every South American country except Peru, I think. And I've seen them all. And I could truly say that what we have is a gem. I didn't speak from what I read. I said we have a gem of a country. But mind you, while aesthetically we look good, when you break it down by education, when you look at Barbados has the highest in the Caribbean in terms of education, literacy rate. Barbados has the highest literacy rate. Jamaica has the highest happiest index in the Caribbean. Jamaica has the happiest index. And so the quality of life is what we have to go after now, not aesthetics. We have to go after making sure that when you see any Bahamian student, he or she is the best in the Caribbean in education. When you see any Bahamian student, he or she understands what excellence is all about. When you see a Bahamian mother, a Bahamian father, they're happy, and so on. We got to find ways of creating a happy society. And the way we do that is by making sure that the country called Bahamas, that the resources that she produced for her citizens. Right now, most of the resources that are produced within the Bahamas, we really get the crumbs. And so in building the Bahamas over the next 50 years, the key element must be Bahamians in making sure that whether it's in investment, whether in terms of yield on investment, that we get it. Right now, this administration is heavy taxing us. They're putting a lot of burden on the business owners, the small business owners for taxation and so on and so on. And all the while, they're the ones mismanaging the money. And so, at the end of the day, though, it's about how do we live in a society comfortable? And that's what real governance is all about. When you could get out in the street and you're not afraid, when the air you breathe is clean, the water you drink is pure, and whether you just feel happy to be in your country. And right now, most people are not happy to be in their country. I mean, while some may be, when you go in the inner city, it's a war zone in the corner there. They're interested in being here. They won't get out. And so we got to make sure that there are no war zones and so on. There are no slums in the Bahamas. That the Bahamas is what we call the Commonwealth. It's a beautiful, clean, green, and pristine country.
There is a good place to put a pin, I believe, Cassius.
Yes, sir.
We are old friends, and I just want to tell you, you're a good man, and I really appreciate everything that you've meant to my life.
I'm still here for you, sir. Anytime you need me, I'm always here for you.
I know, but there's something that I have. There's a podcast that I listen to called Great Minds with Kevin Hart. And one of the things that Kevin likes to do is, quote unquote, give people their flowers. Yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm giving you your flowers because I want you to think I think you died. But I do want to say you were a big brother to me at BFM when I started my journey there in a way that I really appreciate. And you've meant a lot to me as the years have progressed. So in case you wonder, I love you. You're a good man.
Thank you so much. Love you too, brother. Appreciate you always.
All righty. And that's going to do it, folks, for us here today. The Political Review is hosted by me, K. Quincy Parker. Our guest was the inimitable Cassius Stewart. Mr. Stewart, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
John Lee Ferguson was our engineer. Wally, great job as usual. And what's up next is Let's Talk Together Live in English with Lady T. And we'll see you again next week. God bless.